If it takes you a year to deliver on 300 systems, our goal is to be able to do that a magnitude more than that per month. New technology adoption should be quick, it should be cheap, and they shouldn't be accountable to breaking it. We all got trained on the Puma, the AV Pumas. And initially you get all this training and then they're like, well, now you're a Puma pilot. I'm like, we don't want to be Puma pilots. We just want to know how to fly it, use it, break it, burn it, whatever. I don't want to be held to a training standard. It's popular to be in defense tech now, but we have to know what the operator needs so that we're not building something that we think is best in class and they get it and they have to adapt to the technology we provide. We're supposed to adapt to their needs. We're going to learn some different lessons from Indo-PACOM, but we have to learn them in the next 12 months.
Today's guest is a retired U.S. Air Force Chief Master Sergeant and Special Operations veteran from the 24th Special Tactics Squadron. He served 23 years as a pararescue man with 17 combat deployments across the globe, ranging from the Middle East to Africa. Today, he's our Chief Growth Officer and co-founder at Firestorm, working to keep our technology aligned with what's needed most on the ground. Please welcome Chad McCoy. Chad, thanks for joining us today.
Joining us.
Yeah. The royal us, the royal we.
Finally made it to Drone Wars podcast.
I know, you're a lucky man. We kind of upgraded a little bit since the last time we sat in something. We got nice mahogany everywhere.
Yeah.
That was Emma's choice.
Like the sign that you took by force.
Yeah. By force, by legal means. They say by any means necessary. And a lot of time that means you just send a really nasty email from a lawyer to somebody and then
we've got plenty of people in the company over 6'6".
Yeah. By plenty, you mean what? 2?
There's like 4 down there.
Really?
You see the 2 guys working on xCell? They both they can lift it.
They're big guys. I know.
And they look like twins.
Yeah. In college, there was this game it was called Trees and Trolls. And the trees are the big guys and the trolls have to run through the trees.
Okay.
We're getting ready. We have about enough people that are that big. Start playing Trees and Trolls.
The Firestorm Flag Football League is going to be lit when we start it.
We got a couple D1 athletes.
Yeah.
We got the father of potentially a D1 athlete.
Who's that?
You.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah, that's right. That's me.
All right. Chad, tell everybody about yourself.
Have we started yet?
Yeah, of course. This is all outtakes.
Okay. So. Introduce myself. I spent a couple decades in the Air Force. I did special operations in the Air Force. My job was to go behind enemy lines and rescue pilots when they eject over combat zones. So in the 90s, before the war, you had a few jobs that would guarantee you're going to be like actively a participant in things that were exciting, not necessarily combat, but things that were exciting, right? And so if you looked at special operations in the 90s, peacetime, force, a lot of training. You would train, and then you wouldn't necessarily go to, actually action what you trained for. So the Air Force had a job called Pararescue, and pararescue men were always busy. Whether they're rescuing people outside of a mountain, Mount McKinley. You see on the news routinely guys jumping into the middle of the ocean, rescuing, a boat that capsizes in the middle of the Atlantic or Pacific. The movie, The Perfect Storm, the PJs that jumped in, we lost one, to rescue those guys. I mean, these are routinely happening through the 90s, but then you're also trained for a wartime mission, which allowed you to kind of, if you're a adrenaline junkie, kind of cover all the bases, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also you get to go to all these cool schools right off the bat as a pararescue man. And so you get to go to free fall school, dive school, all the schools that people wait like an entire career in Army Special Forces for. And even SEALs, in the 90s would go to training, you go to your first team and you're on probation and then you train, right? And so pararescue was an opportunity to get out there and be in the mix immediately. Shortly after I joined, a couple of years after 9/11 happened and the world changed. And then it became really like, it wasn't feast or famine, it was feast for everybody if you were in the right positions. And so I did that for a couple of decades. I culminated my career, almost actually 90% of my career, at Fort Bragg, working with the Army and the Navy, with special operations teams. and ended up retiring there in 21 as the chief master sergeant of the unit up there.
Mm-hmm. So can you talk about maybe publicly one or two of the most interesting missions you went on?
Yeah, early days in Iraq, a lot of times as a pararescue man, those interesting missions are usually revolve around tragedy. So it's not like a brag, it's a very respectful kind of relationship to mission. And so if you're doing your job as a pararescue man, usually it's someone else's like really bad day. With full reverence for the situation, in Iraq in the early days, British C-130 got shot down with a man pad. It was like a homemade man pad. They shot it down, had some SAS guys in the back of it, and the Brits didn't have a whole lot of C-130s. It crashed. My team we would only do stuff at night at the time, and they asked if we could go out and help out during the daytime. So we jumped on some British Super Pumas. I forget what they called them. They had a cool name for them, but we flew out to the site, went on the ground for about 3 days, recovering bodies out of the river and the strewn wreckage just north of Baghdad. And it's a mission that you don't want to have because it shows, the mortality of combat. But it's also the dignified transfer of those people and what you get to do to support, bringing them home to their families, which is a righteous mission. And so, yeah, I did that in the early days of Iraq, spent a lot of time in Afghanistan in the early days. Can't get into all the specifics, but, a lot of ground combat in Afghanistan, a lot of driving to a location, getting out of vehicles and walking in, sneaking up to, a compound and blowing the front door down and getting really loud. But did that for years and then spent a lot of time in East Africa. Was part of a famous hostage rescue out there to rescue an American off the coast of Somalia.
Oh, who could that be?
And which at the time, yeah, at the time you don't think these are big deals because you're in the mix.
Yep.
So spent time in East Africa, a lot of time in Somalia, in the early days of Somalia, living out of the back of cabs and driving through the city, before there were big installations or bases. And then culminated my career leading that unit of young guys and about 150 studs of the best caliber operators in the world, and retired. Now I'm a dirty civilian.
So what did that teach you about leadership?
Well, you learn you learn through your failures. You learn that leadership is hard. It's contextual. It's to the environment you're in. I also learned that leadership is also, while it's contextual, it's universal. Like those traits are universal to business or combat or, military. I think that's one of the biggest things I learned. But being a part of that unit, being around the best of the best, means that you're in a constant state of competition, whether you like to acknowledge it or not. When you're around the best, it's like being we have a bunch of athletes that work in this company. They know the environment of being a D1 athlete, being around the best, and they want to be the best. And that competitive nature, I think, is healthy. In certain times it's probably unhealthy. But I think we've done a good job here of hiring people that have those attributes. Yeah,
you got to keep hiring A-team players, because if you start staffing B's and C's, then everyone's unhappy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you pushed that in the very beginning of the company, and I didn't understand it at first. And then I saw it play out that they have their own selection. Like they're like the soft guys of, the collegiate world, where they've been assessed and selected for a very small team. They know what excellence is. They know how to work hard. And so it's a translatable skill. Mm-hmm. And they're great to have around. So we need more of them.
So you've done a bunch of work with the Honor Foundation. We try and volunteer our time here a lot as well. Obviously, there's a lot of transition groups, right, for folks getting out of the military, adjusting and finding work in the civilian world. How does your experience in the military, specifically with the context of our company, how's it made you a better founder?
Well, in defense tech, I think it's essential. Mm-hmm. When we first started it, I don't know if you guys kind of knew my vision and how I saw the world. I look at the world differently. I always have, but I don't understand how defense tech founders can be successful within this environment, because it's so difficult to penetrate. And not just on a transactional sales cycle. It's like, how do you build product for the warfighter without understanding it at the deepest level? When we first started this company, I'd equate it to like you're building, Nike basketball shoes, but you've never been to a basketball game. And so you're building like a track shoe, right? And so defense tech is absolutely that. And it's popular to be in defense tech now, but we have to know at a granular level what the operator needs so that we're not building something that we think is best in class and they get it and they have to adapt to the technology we provide. We're supposed to adapt to their needs. And that's what xCell does is with this rapid prototyping model is that we're going to get products that we never thought about. Yeah. And because we're not as smart as them, we're not in the mix anymore. And this is going to be the unlock code. If we were just building this platform's like we're building this airplane and you're going to love it. It's going to be the best platform we ever had. In 2 years, their needs are wildly different. And so if this platform can adapt and we use the term future-proof for a long time, but if we can evolve the product continuously, we never vendor lock the operator. And it's not about the guys that are driving the budget. They're important for sure. I mean, they control our fate. It's about the end user. And that's something that we've really strived as a business to inculcate across our business to say, this is what we consider to be crucial to success. And I think that is a transferable skill.
Okay, so back up a little bit, right? Obviously, you had a very different military career than a lot of people, but I think it's really important for the context of building autonomous systems for the DoD, right? Explain to me how, you've told me this before, even you guys in these units didn't always have the best technology or defense technology was not as good as commercially available technology.
That's right. Yeah, SOCOM got a good reputation of adoption of technology and kind of having the best in class, but hot take is that it wasn't always the case. And so traditionally in small teams in SOCOM, you had what we call op fund or operational funds that you could kind of spend on local economy. You're accountable to it. There's criteria for how you can spend it, but you have the ability to do that, which conventional forces don't. And so you look at the prevalence of DJI used within SOCOM units to look at a target building and go inside it and say, hey man, what is the threat in here? You can put a camera on a dog, but a dog is a critical asset, right? If the dog gets shot, that's a team member.
Yep.
Now, when you put a robot in there and it's disposable, it changed the game. It allowed you to have situational awareness that we never had. But that wasn't a technology that a defense company built for SOCOM. That was a bunch of SOCOM guys going, well, look, this is the best in class product. And it was, and it still is. It's pretty badass.
Yep.
And those systems being employed, we started seeing vulnerabilities in them. And so then when we come back to SOCOM, you're like, well, can you take away these critical vulnerabilities so we can still use them? And we spent millions of dollars trying to fix it, and you don't get it fixed. And so, what we talked about previously was, what are those things that, the operator always wanted and couldn't get? And in my experience, even at the highest levels of SOCOM, the laundry list of things that are requirements you have that don't get funded because the funding goes to radios, MPGs, weapons, potentially even aircraft, right? Because it costs a lot to run aircraft, sorties, training, et cetera. Those cool ideas, the one-offs that might cost $800,000 to $1 million to develop if you knew the right company, it's never going to get prioritized. And even within SOCOM. And so when we started this business, you start to understand programs like SIBR, which helped us out as a company. It was the first contract we had. It was a bet that we were a company that was viable, allows us to take investment. But those programs, I didn't know about them when I was an E9, and bad on me. If I had known about them, I would have exploited the crap out of them. I would have said, yeah, we'll run all these projects. So that was the biggest takeaway for me.
Yeah. How do you think the DoD needs to do a better job of ingesting new technologies?
I don't think there's any lack. Well, it's training, it's requirements. From my experience, when I was in service, we all got trained on the Puma, the AV Pumas, and we had a bunch of them. And initially, you get all this training, and then they're like, well, now you're a Puma pilot. I'm like, we don't want to be Puma pilots. We just want to know how to fly it, go use it, break it, burn it, whatever. I don't want to be held to a training standard. And the military likes to add all this bureaucracy to any kind of training. It could be riding a bicycle, and there's a 3-week program they have to do once a year. Well, with Puma training, you're like, oh, you have to do recurring training. And we're like, we don't have time for it. You get 2 weeks as a SOCOM guy is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, it's being able to take something very quickly, spin it into the mission you need, and then move on with your life.
Simplify it for the end user is what you're basically saying. So you don't need to have constant training.
Well, yeah. So I said training was the issue. So new technology adoption should be quick. It should be cheap, and they shouldn't be accountable to breaking it.
Mm-hmm.
Dave Hubler's our head of Army programs. Dave lived a life in the Army, and their relationship to accountability for equipment was a way higher threshold than mine was as an Air Force soft guy. Where when those guys get out of the Army, it's like, where's that strobe light we issued you? Oh, you don't have it? Well, guess what? You got to pay $250 out of pocket. That's literally how stringent it is. And so when you give somebody a tool that costs, let's just for conversation's sake, say $50,000, and you break it on a training event, people are nervous around training. And us as a company, we wanted to lower that bar to say, look, these are disposable systems. Even the ones that are kinetic, if they're $350,000, you're not training with it.
Mm-hmm.
No one has those training budgets.
Mm-hmm.
If you do. But if the barrier to entry is way lower and we can get them reps, same system you're going to fly in combat is the same when you're flying in a training range.
Mm-hmm.
This is allowing that tech adoption at the speed that they need. And I think that that's the difference.
Yeah.
And we're not the only ones doing it. There's a lot of companies doing it.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit about Firestorm. This is what you do now. So when you joined, how many phone calls do you think you made your first year to actually go find who was going to be our first customer or our first champion? That's the right word. It's not a customer, it's a champion.
It was a lot. I mean, we took every call. And a lot of people didn't take calls with us, because I think they're inundated with, if I was on the government side, I want to take your call. Like, just send me the slick sheet. Lots, hundreds, the first year. And very few of them netted anything.
Mm-hmm.
So as a business, a lot of interested people, a lot of people that wasted time of like, hey, yeah, we're interested in what you guys are doing. There were a lot of dead ends. And you have to find that early champion. And the early champion for us was a friendly network back into AFSOC that understood, look, I understood the FARP concept, Agile Common Employment. I lived that life as a SOF operator.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a solution that didn't solve everything, but it solved something that was really critical for the future. And I think that there was enough confidence that, myself and more importantly, Brett, Barbie, knew that mission very well. And they could trust the fact that he was, being an honest broker of what capability we're developing. And that's really a differentiator.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that was that the first kind of big lesson learned from you, that you're going to have to boil the ocean? Like, just thinking about the whole scaling journey here, right? From 3 people building something in a garage to we're over 120 now.
Well, I didn't have to boil the ocean. I think I chose to make my life hard. To do it over again, completely different playbook, right? You have experience. You understand where funding streams are. You understand who is a time waster and who's actually going to be potentially a return on investment. And the relationships are transactional, right? We're a business. We're for profit. We need to get stuff done. And so, boiling the ocean the first year and a half, candidly, was stressful, but it was probably the inoculation that you needed into industry coming out of the military. Brett might disagree with me on that, but because it came at a price. Yeah.
Sure. What do you think out of that first year to where we are now, almost at the end of year 3, what's changed? What have you learned? If you had 2 or 3 takeaways, maybe.
We allowed the market to drive product. We made some changes along the way. And externally, you could be critical of our business, say, well, you got off your initial thesis and you couldn't do it. Like, no, we allowed the market to determine where we're going. And xCell became a bigger draw to solve broader problems. Mm-hmm. And so a bit of a pivot, not a huge pivot, but it's a complementary pivot to our core product line. And then honestly, we shouldn't be married to any product. Like in any industry, you have to allow kind of the ebb and flow of demand and also funding to drive that calculus. And I think that we've done a good job of that in the past 3 years.
Talk to us a little bit about the xCell. What is the xCell?
So it's containerized manufacturing. the whole goal for us right now is that we can deliver something by kind of any means, ship, aircraft, eventually we'll sling load it, but and drop it down and in a couple hours start producing critical, essential kind of parts and pieces initially, aircraft, mass, and then a myriad of other defense applications to include weapons out of a box. That's very unique. No one is doing it like us. And so when you and I were talking the first year of the business, we talked about, I forget which book that you had just read. You're like, you got to read this book. But we talked about category creation, being a category king. And it's really hard to do that within the drone space. Lots of drones, a lot of great drones. Great drones are expensive. Good drones are still expensive. So the question was, do we want to be a great drone company, or do we want to be something completely different and look at combat and solving contested logistics and hard problems that no one else could do? Because you and I went to all these conferences in Austin, right? And we heard people talking about the pain points for the Army. And they said, how are we going to get after these contested logistics problems? And we knew that we were onto something. It didn't solve everything. But there was a gap in capability across industry, and no one wanted to solve it. They're building these big factories in the States, and we're like, that's going to be completely obsolete when the blockade happens. And so it's not that we're clairvoyant or super visionaries. It's that we kind of watched the tides and we watched where we needed to be. And then there was an opportunity for us to strike, and we did it, and we did it in the right time.
Did you know that because of the article that went out last night, the xCell is all over Russian Telegram now? And you know what their response is? I wish we had it.
Oh, the Russians. Yeah.
Yep. And the whole idea is that distributed manufacturing is now a big deal.
Yeah.
For everywhere in the world.
Our business will still evolve over the next 12 to 18 months. What we're seeing right now with our relationship, our tight relationship with the Army, through an effort that Firestorm has done to integrate tight with the established, kind of sustainment seededs, the Army's efforts to modernize. We're seeing things that we didn't think about when we first started the company. We're seeing parts replacement for vehicles of things that we would have never thought of. We're seeing parts for weapon systems to cite in, legacy systems that we're able to produce. I talked with the Air Force a couple weeks ago about parts and pieces in the cockpit of a C-130. And while you can't do airworthy parts necessarily right now, those things will change. And what does airworthy have to be? MQ-9s were falling out of the sky routinely over the past, 18 months. When do those become attritable? And if they do, can we replace parts in MQ-9? And you know the answer.
I don't know the answer, Chad. Tell us.
I think that things are changing quickly.
Yeah. I think it's pretty impressive to see what Driscoll and Hegseth have done as far as right to repair. And there's some interesting language too in the NDAA around, adding millions of 3D printed parts into the DoD, because some of the things we're now being asked to fix, like, what I like to say is there's no Pep Boys or AutoZone, right? For the DoD. You can't just drive to a store and pick up a part. So if you're waiting 9 months for something that's going to keep a multi-million-dollar system down, that is a huge problem.
Yeah. The timing is providential for us as a business.
Yeah.
Couldn't have planned it any better. But I would say that we didn't stumble into our strategy as a business. Like, everyone was over-indexed on Europe, and we tried to support it. But candidly, they had those systems, and they were making them cheap. They liked what they had. Great. We don't need to upend that just to get in there. We donated some systems. We learned we built some good relationships. But then we made the conscious effort as a business. And this is before Indo-PACOM got kind of wild and everyone wanted to go to Indo-PACOM. We made the decision to say, we're going to go out here because this is a really hard problem. We think that this battlefield is more linear. If we can solve this one, we can solve anything. And we're proving that thesis out. And so what that should provide the DoD and our foreign partners is the confidence that these systems, if they can work in the hardest environment possible, that we know we can over-deliver in areas, and not to minimize the missions, but Africa, like you're at a remote base in Niger or Mauritania or, Sudan, South Sudan, and you have the ability to produce combat capability where no one else is coming to support you, because if you know how big Africa is, it takes like 12 hours for an airplane to come do resupply. if we can produce combat systems that provide capability, it doesn't have to be lethal. It could be ISR, it could be counter-UAS, and do that at the edge. We know we can do it because we did it in the Pacific. And I have a map in my office that has all these small little islands in the Indo-PACOM. And the geography is really challenging because we're talking over water. The alt-nav systems are different. The environmental conditions are more challenging with the humidity and the salt water. The countermeasures are going to be more significant too, potentially. And so we're going to hopefully learn a lot from Ukraine, and everyone's listening. And we're going to learn some different lessons from Indo-PACOM, but we have to learn them in the next 12 months.
Yeah. So we have a company motto, I guess, for 2026, which is to win the Pacific, right? What does win the Pacific mean to you?
It means that xCell has to be, so there's a term in the military we use. There's two. Depends on your flavor. OPB and OPE. OPB is operational prep of the battlefield, and OPE is operational prep of the environment. But the long and short of it is you have to make decisions left of conflict to put the right mechanisms in place to support you when conflict happens. And so that could be people, right? That could be sources, could be building up a partner force to go fight for you initially. That's what SF's done for years. Or it could be logistics. And so for us to win the Pacific, we need to have xCell's proliferated alts to the key locations that allow us to support critical systems, infrastructure, and personnel when the lights go off. And here's the difference for anyone who wants to criticize our capability and say xCell can't do this. Well, guess what? It will be the only game in town. And whether you like that the products can get 100 flights in one aircraft and not break, whether it's not, what you think is the gold standard of carbon fiber, it doesn't have to be. Because all the systems that are getting made in the States, when the lights go off, aren't getting delivered out there. And if it takes you a year to deliver on 300 systems, our goal is to be able to do that, a magnitude more than that per month with the right network. And so we are, we joked around about this before. Our company is turning into a con-op. It's turning into a concept of operation that really is looking at it from an operational lens and allow us to say, what are the things that we need in theater to be successful for you and for my former life? And then what comes on the back end of that when you need a new part that we haven't even thought about, and allowing AI and potentially engineering San Diego support you into a combat theater, or in the worst case, complete isolation, and you're able to build it yourself and prototype and build new products.
I love it. So Chad, I want you to kind of look into your wizard's ball here, okay? What do you think the future of autonomous systems, and it doesn't need to be just things in the air, could be water, ground, subsurface is now all the rage all of a sudden. What do you think is going to be making kind of big waves in the next 12 to 24 months?
I think policy will change. Systems will be fully autonomous, I think within that time frame. I think hopefully if we do it right, it'll reduce collateral damage, it'll increase efficacy of weapons, less weapons on target, more pinpoint precision. And then swarm is obviously the opposition to that. And then it's going to be a family of systems. So maritime systems working with airborne platforms to create a network of awareness and domain awareness that we've never had. Mm-hmm. And really, it's going to be devastating effects on target. And but the problem is you can't print 10,000 drones and leave them in warehouses all over the Pacific. But if you can turn on the spigot when you need it and create combat capability within a certain time frame, it makes a lot more sense financially and also from a logistics perspective. So I think warfare is going to be both empowered with artificial intelligence in a precision sense, and then it'll also be empowered in a mass sense in a way we haven't seen since probably World War II.
Cool. All right, buddy. Thank you for joining us today.
Back to work.
I appreciate it. Thanks for listening to the Drone Wars podcast. If you liked what you heard today, please subscribe to catch all the latest insights for all things defense and geopolitics.